Hey everybody, welcome to Late Late Horror Show. I am Dino. As always, this is the history of old time radio shows where I just blabber on about everything there is to know on the show. So, with that said, give a thumbs up. Think of maybe joining the channel, Patreon. All the links are down below. Check them out. RTN, Dennis. Used to be, rest in peace, my friend. Hi, boy, donuts to you. Every time Gangbusters would come on, he would say, nobody's getting any sleep tonight. It is one of the loudest intros around, and it's just a noisy, loud show. Gangbusters. But here we go. It's a dramatic crime anthology. Broadcast history was from July 20th through October 12th of 1935. So quite a long run. Not a long run. Let me stop. not a long run. What am I talking about? Wait a second. I'm trying to get this. Okay. See, I got to read this all the way through. This is the boring part, going through all the dates and times. So I am going to say it. So here we go. Let me start over. There we go. That's how you do it on this channel. You just keep rolling with the punches. Okay, so broadcast history was from July 20th through October 12th of 1935 on NBC. Okay, I'll try to get through this real quick. Saturdays at 9, initially heard as G-Men. The sponsor was Chevrolet. January 15th, 1936 through June 15th, 1940, CBS. 30 minutes, Wednesdays at 10, 1936 through 1938, Wednesdays at 8, 1938 through 1939, Saturdays at 8, 1939 through 1940, Colgate Palmolive, 1936 through 38, CUE magazine. Must not have been around all that long, right? Q magazine, 1939 through 1940, October 11th, 1940, through December 25th, 1948. On the Blue Network, ABC, 30 minutes, Fridays at 9, 1940 through 1945. Saturdays at 9, 1945 through 1948. Tide Detergent, 1948. So what am I talking about? This has had a long run is what it's had. January 8th, 1949 through June 25th, 1955 on CBS, 30 minutes. Saturdays at 9 p.m. 1949 through 1954, Mondays at 9:30, 1954 through 1955. Grape Nut Cereal. There you go, 1949 through 1954. Wrigley's Gum, 1954 through 1955. Finally, October 5th, 1955 through November 27th, 1957 on the Mutual Network, 30 minutes, Wednesdays at 8. Whew, there we go. That had a long run. It's a shame there's not more Gangbusters out there. There's not a lot of episodes, really, in the scheme of things. It's a shame. But anyways, the cast was New York radio actors including Alice Reinhart, Santos Ortega, Bryna Rayburn, Don McLaughlin, Elspeth Eric, Frank Lovejoy, Neon Janney, Larry Haynes, Grant Richards, Roger DeCoven, Julie Stevens, Art Carney, Richard Widmark, Raymond Edward Johnson, Louise Fitch, Joan Banks, Robert Dryden. I had to say Art Carney. I mean, come on. Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason, Art Carney. I mean, does it get any better than that? The narrator was Phillips H. Lord. Colonel H. Norman Schwarzkopf? Wait a second. Norman Schwarzkopf. Could it be the military? Who knows? From January 1938. Commissioner Louis J. Valentine from circa 1945. Announcers Charles Stark, Frank Gallup, Roger Forster, Don Gardner, Gilbert Martin, etc. Creator, producer, director, Phillips H. Lord. Directors, Jay Hanna, George Zachary, Leonard Bass, Bill Sweets, Paul Monroe, Harry Frazee. Harry Frazee. I remember just speaking of the honeymooners, there was an actor in one of the episodes. They were trying to read the marquee, looking out the window in the honeymooners. Jackie Gleason, Art Carney, and they were pulling up what movie it could be that he just see because he couldn't remember. And Art Carney, Ed Norton says it's on the marquee, and the actor's name was Frazee, Frazee. So Harry Frazee. Any relation there? And anyways, writers John Mole, Stanley Niss, Bryce Disk, etc. Sound effects Ed Blaney, James Flynn, Harry Nelson for the Blue Network ABC, Jerry McCarty, James Rogan, Orville White, Byron Wingett, CBS, Bob Prescott, several networks, Jeesh, Harry Bubbock, and Ray Kramer. So here we go. Let's describe this show. Gangbusters was the noisiest show on the air. The sharp blast of a policeman's whistle, shuffling feet, gunshots, a broken window, the stark metallic voice of a burglar alarm, and the forlorn answer of a police siren. Machine guns, spring bullets like flit, tires screeching, more glass breaking. I mean, come on. The noisiest show on the air. And this was only the opening signature. This best remembered of all police shows was produced in cooperation with police and federal law enforcement departments throughout the United States. It was billed as the only national program that brings you authentic police case histories. It was so loud that it created its own term in slang. Come on, like gangbusters. Gangbusters, that's where it came from. Meaning to enter, arrive, begin, participate, or perform in a sensational, loud, active, or striking manner. Wentworth and Flexner, Dictionary of American Slang. There you go. It began in 1935 when Phillips H. Lord, radio's venerable Seth Parker, hiccups, was looking for a new radio idea. The popularity of Seth Parker had been severely compromised when Lord had been accused of a publicity stunt in a South Pacific shipwreck, and he needed a fresh approach for a radio comeback. The era of gangsterism in movies was at its peak. Films like Little Caesar and The Public Enemy had good box office numbers. What was missing, Lord decided, was the authoritative approach. Even Scarface, which had purported to be about Al Capone, had avoided mentioning the Chicago racketeer by name. Lord envisioned a hard-hitting series in which all names would be used with everything verified from official files. Wow. At his first case, he would dramatize the story of John Dillinger, killed by G-Men the summer before he exited the Biograph Theater in Chicago. I got to slow down my reading. Listen, I read too fast. I start mumbling words. Let me slow down, Dino. Lord sold the idea to Chevrolet, then flew to Washington with the automaker's ad men to persuade J. Edgar Hoover, director of the Division of Investigation, soon to be the FBI. Wow, this was going on right at that time. To cooperate. Hoover was less than thrilled, but his reluctance was countered by the approval of the Attorney General. Hoover stipulated that only closed cases could be used, and Lord wrote his opening show in a small office on the 5th floor of the Department of Justice building in Washington. Very interesting. Adding another authoritative element was Louis J. Valentine, crime-busting commissioner of New York Police, who gave advice and delivered a short talk on the opening broadcast. It premiered as G-Men in mid-1935. For his second show, Lord dramatized the violent career of Lester Gillis, better known as George Babyface Nelson, another killer who had died in shootout with G-Men. For a time, he concentrated on nationally notorious criminals George R. Machine Gun Kelly, Bonnie Parker, and Clyde Barrow. Charles Arthur Prettyboy Floyd, and Arthur Flegenheimer, also known as Dutch Schultz. But Hoover was not happy, and what little help Lord was getting from the FBI continued to diminish. As the initial G-Men ran its course, the concept was revised as Gangbusters. This series would cut a broad swath through radio crime drama with no help whatever from the FBI. The scope broadened to include lesser known through perhaps more interesting stories. The sound effects continued to be elaborate and aggressive. Cutting into the opening was the filtered voice, giving description of wanted men in calling all cars manner. More to follow on Gangbusters, clues the announcer would promise, and the sirens and submachine guns would come up full as the story began. The clues became one of the most successful gimmicks in radio. At the end of each story, a national alert was aired for actual criminals wanted by the police or the FBI. The fine details of the criminal's appearance, with special attention to scars, moles, or other distinguishing marks, helped capture 110 wanted men in the first 3 years. By 1943, more than 1,500 clues had been broadcast, sometimes as many as 6 per show. The tally that year was 286, armed and extremely dangerous men who had been brought to justice by Gangbusters. The show utilized an interview format. It began with Lord interviewing by proxy a local lawman or federal agent who had figured prominently in the story. Later, Colonel H. Norman Schwarzkopf, whose son would become a hero half a century later in the Persian Gulf. His son did. Okay, so there you go, Norman Schwarzkopf, same name. Schwarzkopf had been superintendent of the New Jersey State Police during the investigation of Bruno Richard Hauptmann for the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby, and had battled Hoover for a jurisdiction of the case. Having Schwarzkopf on the show would be a double bonus for Lord. It would continue the authoritative air begun with Valentine, and it would annoy Hoover. Meanwhile, Valentine continued his association with the show for years, though often by name only. Now picture our setting as special office, turned over to Gangbusters by Commissioner Louis J. Valentine of the New York City Police, the announcer would say. Lord and later Schwarzkopf would chat informally in this fictional office, reviewing the case in chronological order. Then the voices of Lord and Schwarzkopf and their proxy police men would fade, and the cases were handled as straight drama. In the fall of 1945, Valentine stepped down as police chief and became the regular Gangbusters narrator. In 1946, he left the show at the request of General Douglas MacArthur, who wanted him to reorganize the police departments in defeated Japan. Gangbusters was among several old radio shows rebroadcast by syndication in the 1960s. It was not well received, considered too pro-police for the time, but was still on the air in some markets in the 1990s. Another of the show's ingredients was still quite potent in the 90s. The TV show Unsolved Mysteries regularly telecast clues to the identity of conmen, robbers, and killers, roping in lawbreakers who had eluded capture, sometimes for years. So there you go, Gangbusters. It's funny they say Unsolved Mysteries because it's kind of like that. I mean, they really dealt with the FBI and police officials and stuff like that. Started out with real cases, but still had a lot of influence from, what they got from those files. So there you go. With that said, this is History of Old Time Radio on the Late Late Horror Show. And I hope you enjoyed it. Give a thumbs up, please. Comment below. And let me know that you like these and want me to continue to do them. So with that said, much love and peace.